We've heard your voices, and we're very glad to have both of you in the studio this morning. Lydia Mavia is a policy advisor, and Ruto OYIER, a communication strategist. And it was interesting because just, some time back we said, and I've seen it on the socials as well, we've never been on the same side. And so here we are, still great friends, but still on the opposite sides. And it's very good to have both of you in the hot seats this morning. Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rita.
Good morning.
Karibuni sana. We're getting into the conversation. We're getting into the last stretch, the final miles of this journey that has been campaigning and mudslinging and insults and, all sorts of things being thrown at us, promises being made, hopes being set, peace being called for, so much happening, and then just 7 days towards that. And today we're asking our question, what is the state of the race, or looking at the state of the race so far? And then what then can it inform Kenyans of what will happen come Tuesday next week? And even as we talk about this, let's start off with you, Lydia. What do you see from where we've come from, where we are, and where the country is going in the next 7 days? What do you see to be the state of things with the elections or the campaigns before we get to the elections?
I see people who are very anxious. The campaigns are very anxious. They are hopeful, but they are not sure that they've done everything that they should have done to come. There's a sense of you get a feeling that they are dashing to the finish line, like, how many more rallies can we do? How many places have we not gone? Where do we need to revisit? And you can see the schedules of both candidates are fairly intense up to the 6th of August. And so they're throwing everything that they can at this thing. They don't want to leave any little effort they can add. They don't want to leave it undone. For the country, the sense I get when I speak to my friends and just people, everyone is just like, can this election come, we vote, it finishes. Like, can we be done? Can we be done and continue with our lives? A little more cynical, group of people will tell you that this thing is going on all the way up to November. So we won't be done with it just in a day. There's likely to be contestation, at least up to the Supreme Court level. So you can expect this to elongate or continue for like a month or so. So that's the sense that I get from where I sit. And there is this charge now to make sure that people have their agents ready, agents that they can trust, because this election will come down to the wire and it will be about those votes that are counted in those polling stations. Nobody wants to have those votes counted and they're not sure what is happening in that room. So the issue of agents is going to occupy both campaigns this particular week quite intensely. And I think the other thing is, and this is something that I know I've picked up from the Azimio group, is to really communicate to the voters that Baba is not running on ODM, on the voting, on the ballot paper. It's not ODM. It's Azimio la Umoja. So those now last minute communication elements where you really need to tick those boxes and tell people, you're going to find me there. There's going to be blue. There's not going to be orange. And this is what you should expect, so that you don't go there looking for Baba. You're looking for the orange fruit. You don't find it and you're like, what's going on? So this last minute communication elements, I think, is what will also be happening a lot this week. Yeah.
From where you sit, Rita, what do you see? How do you see things and playing out over the next 7 days?
I'll just speak from where Lydia has stopped. The issue of communication right now seems to be the biggest. There's less focus on going to the ground, but more on how you communicate on the ground, because unlike previous elections, this was a bit the passion and the energy and even the funds that have gone into this campaign are not as much as previous two campaign cycles. So right now you can see the communication changing a bit. You can see the tone You can see the choice of words. You can see the targets changing. Of course, there's a bit of concern. You can see propaganda kicking up a bit more because our candidates are trying to rally people to the vote. This is the get out the vote period, because someone can have been enjoying your message, but they will not show up. And you know, that is quite typical of especially the young voters. They might not show up. So people are trying to rally the passion, giving the voters a reason, whether it's the reason against the other candidate, come vote because we cannot have so-and-so in, or come and vote for me because I have this to offer. That is the communication challenge that is there. And like she has said, Kenya Kwanza has a different set of problem. They have to be educated that when you go to the ballot, it is not Kenya Kwanza you will find UDA, which is the very opposite statement of what Azimio are trying to communicate, which is you will not find ODM, you will find Azimio. Right. So it's a very, we've not quite been in this scenario before. The other thing that is very unique and what I can see, from both politicians and the voters is it seems like no one clearly will have the 50+1. The polls have indicated this, variously different polls. Unlike other elections, there's no clear winner this time round. It doesn't seem from all reasonable analysis that we'll have a 50+1. So that raises a lot of questions, both on the political side and even on IEBC side. Like we had the score last time, and the lawyers are preparing for any Supreme Court. This time we might have a unique problem of nobody getting a 50+1. So how are we even prepared as a country for a potential runoff? Because we might be hoping, and the voters are very tired, like Lydia saying, they just want these elections to go. But what if we have a runoff? Then the elections are not going. And now we are in November. Then are people psychologically prepared? The other thing that I can see the voters not doing very well is they're not primed to start disconnecting emotionally with their candidates. Because I might have felt this way about a certain person. What if they get the seat? Then what happens to me? I think the media and a lot of the analysts need to start priming the voters to have that emotional separation from their candidate, because the person you might have been decampaigning might get the seat, but you need to be emotionally and mentally prepared for those type of outcomes.
To do what in this case, Rita? To let them go in the sense that they've been with you campaigning, they've been speaking to you on a regular, and then if they do get elected into office, you're not going to see them as often as you were. You were not going to be able to rock up to them and say, well, hello, here's this need or the other.
The game changes completely. Proximity changes, And I keep saying in this social media era, proximity is social capital. But proximity is going to change. I'm not going to knock on Lydia's door, for example, and she can pick her call because now she needs me. I can call Sakaja today and he'll pick my call because I'm a potential vote. But when they get to that office, that's one aspect. Proximity changes. But also they might not get to that office. Then what happens to you who had invested all your emotions in that support and you fought with your friends and all that? So what happens to you? So there's a kind of a psychological and emotional preparation that we have to prime the voters for.
And close to 50% of the country's population will be in that position, whichever way we choose to look at it.
Whichever way you choose to look at it. Yeah.
But I do disagree, though, on the issue of the runoff, because it would take a good percentage of the vote being pulled away from the two candidates for you to then anticipate a runoff. And I don't think that there is a third horse, as it were, a third or a fourth horse. I think whatever bubble Wajakoya came in has already burst. I think once he said those fishy things, hyena things, I think that bubble just completely burst.
Be surprised at the number of people who
they're joking. They're not going to vote for him. I don't think that he'll get a significant amount of votes, and so therefore it's highly unlikely, because ultimately our vote is very, if it's not tribal, the only other dynamic that we have in this election is this hustler, class voting issue that might happen. So I don't see a runoff. I see either one of them might take it. I see, of course, I see Raila becoming president with Martha Karua as deputy.
You say that with some mirth. Is it because of the person sitting to your left?
It's because I know. She's like, before she went to Safina, with Jimmy, she was in UDA. And I know in her heart of hearts, she
still
prefers
UDA.
that UDA win. She's a clause. She's in Safina, but with her claws are still, her umbilical cord is attached to UDA. So she would prefer that UDA wins, and I would prefer that Azimio wins, especially because of the possibility of having the first woman president. So I like I said, I don't see there being a runoff. And then secondly, I do not anticipate that Kenyans have the same kind of connection with their candidates as before. There's something that happened that was traumatic but also good. The campaign between Uhuru and Raila in 2017 was so intense. We were so invested. I mean, we were at war literally. And she was on the ODM side, which is why I'm like, really.
You talk about musical chairs, ladies.
Do you know? I mean, the family meetings that we broke up, the quarreling and the walking out of rooms and the banging of doors that happened, and then now she's like, oh, who is Baba? Baba is bad. I'm like, hey.
How do you explain these changes?
So this is the thing. There was this intense campaign in 2017, and then a handshake happened, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about? All the posts what are you?
That exactly.
All these things I said, all these things I wrote on my Facebook, they no longer make sense. So there is the sense where Kenyans are like, you know what?
We're done.
Done. I could throw everything at this thing as much as I want, but these people, once the election is over, anything could happen. So you are finding that there's some kind of moderation of the intensity with which Kenyans have engaged politically. There's a sense of pragmatism you get from a lot of people, like, mwenye tu atachukua, ni sawa, I'm supporting this person, but just in case it doesn't work, I kind of get it. After all, Manda go give us the words for this. Tunazieka kwa lungs.
But the thing is, if you look at the history of this country, before even the word coalition was invented in political terms, the Kenyan political class have been having handshakes right from independence.
That is true. Because, again, ultimately, politics is about numbers. And you have to find the formula that gives you the numbers. But this handshake was not to inform rallying of numbers. The agenda was not quite explained. The benefit was not quite explained. A lot of people
What would you have considered an adequate explanation?
I mean, like she says, a lot of people had done a lot of things, including swearing in a people's president, where their lives were literally on the line. You had people doing the march from the airport when Baba came back and having tear gas and all that. All that only for someone to wake up and go have this unexplained handshake. You know, you have to, I feel sometimes you have to have a level of accountability for your voters. And a lot of that is missing. And for Raila, this has been my disappointment after the handshake. The level of accountability to the voters. The man who said he was pro something suddenly has become so different. Even BBI, there was no sufficient public participation. Just a minute. There was not sufficient public participation. A man who would never, in his right mind, not attend a public debate because he values involving voters, suddenly has this refreshing way of looking at things like, I will not do that because of... It is really not...
Rita, there's an explanation that has been given for all this.
Which is?
For the better of the citizens, for peace. I've heard that explanation said many times. Seeking to find a way through which Kenyans can live in peace. The statement is the country being larger than any one of us and finding a common ground where that can be.
No.
You find that an inadequate explanation?
City, that might have been what they told you. I'll say two things. What they told me was different because I actually sat with them and told them, because I was de-campaigning BBI, she knows. And they tried to explain to me, it's an aspiration for a more perfect union. That was the explanation I was given
and why is
by
it
the
inadequate?
ODM. Democracy, you can seek a more perfect union. which is, I think, Obama also tried to pursue that. You can seek it as politicians, but democracy dictates that you give people and your supporters. If this, you see, now you're talking about peace. For me, peace is a consequence of acting a certain way or doing certain things right. Peace cannot be an end. We are flagging peace and not doing the things, the right
lead
things
to
behind
peace.
it.
But if I
yes,
may
but
ask you-
still, a more perfect union is a good aspiration for Raila and Uhuru. Where was the more perfect union when people were going on the streets? When you're swearing presidents, when you're saying, what
when
was
you're
this,
saying
resist?
resist.
What was, where was all
So
that?
let me ask the
Yeah?
question and pose it in this manner: is that, Rita, would it have made more sense? And then also for you, Lydia, saying on the other side now, would it have made more sense if Raila Odinga, at the point where he was making or coming together in this handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta, come and say, look, guys, this is where we are. This is what we have been through. Me as the leader in the opposition, etc., and we have decided to do this. Do you think that it would have been better if he took a moment outside of the handshake and explained to people the reasons why he had arrived at the decision that he did? Would it have made more sense?
It would have made more sense. It would have also been, it also needs to have aligned consistently with what he had been pushing for. This was very varied. This man, you have been swearing him in just a few weeks before. And then he wakes up in the dark. In fact, I think you've heard Jimmy say this severally. His advisors were not there. His campaigners were not there. People who put their up to now, City is saying something about peace. I don't know where he had that, but I know from the horse's mouth and from the internal team that had to be explained to, it's a whole different narrative. It has still not come to light what exactly they were trying to do.
So this is the thing with these candidates, is that they have supporters like Rita who hold them hostage, right? And then they are not able to move the country forward.
How do they hold them hostage exactly?
They hold them hostage because they're like, tumekupigania, so huwezi enda kuwa na amani na Uhuru. As we are for, you saw yourself in, you're the people's president, as we don't care. We go to the street, we boycott products because apana that person
Because you have
is
asked
this and
us
that.
to.
Listen, national leadership behoves a person of the stature of Raila Odinga to literally leave his followers behind and elevate the conversation and then come collect you. Now, I do agree that to some extent, both leaders could have done a better job of carrying their supporters along.
being accountable
because
to the citizens.
That is the price that is now being paid politically for not doing it at that time. And this is how it's playing out. For Raila, you're finding that a bit of his core base, has sort of disintegrated because they didn't have clarity, and he's lost a bit of his political support. And you've seen, I think, people like Mudavadi walking away. You've seen a bit of,
Is it the first
but
time
also
Mudavadi-
I mean,
all
it's not the first
blocks,
time.
but also not just individuals, but whole blocks.
also
He's lost a bit of Western, a bit of Coast. He's lost quite a bit of his
a
block.
bit is not whole, and it's very little, and it will not be consequential. But this is the thing I wanted. This is the thing. This is the thing, though. They're both paying the price because also for the president Uhuru Kenyatta, you've seen what a whole section of Jubilee walked off. And that has resulted in the dilapidation of the Jubilee Party.
That
and
is
it might
why
not,
I'm
the
saying
fortunes for Jubilee Party might be
accountability
a lot
to the
lower.
public
Lydia.
is important.
Lydia.
Accountability
Lydia.
and participation is important.
Lydia,
Okay, so go ahead, SCT.
Lydia, Rita, this handshake that we speak of is spoken of as though it represents everything that could possibly have gone wrong and went wrong by some people. And from where the two of you sit, was it the culmination of things that had been going on and we were unaware of? Or was it the beginning of the end of something that we had previously thought was one way? Or was it the beginning of something completely new that we had never anticipated?
First of all, this handshake was a very unique handshake. I have been in active politics since I was a student. And that was, I'd call it maybe 20 years of active political life. And we have never, ever been on the same side with Raila and his supporters. So my entire political experience, my internship in politics, my exercise of political campaigns, my exercise in political leadership, all that, I have never interacted or been on the same side with the Raila people, ever. And so that means that how my ideas have been shaped, politically, and all the people who are like me, have been fundamentally anti Raila, you can imagine. And then here you come 20 years later, and suddenly I'm supposed to now look at this person as an amenable, and this is only unique to Raila, because Mudavadi, there was dealings with, I think Mudavadi, when he was running with that party called was it UDF? What party was it? Okay.
Ignore
And so
the party and continue the story.
exactly. So what you noticed is that this handshake was fundamentally different, and there has been resistance within the basis of these two movements to this change
Yes,
of, like,
so-
this person is
So-
suddenly supposed to be a friend.
So-
What are you talking about?
I like that Lydia is very young, though my dalliance with politics is about the same years. But, we have gone, as Raila supporters, we have gone with him everywhere. Even when he was with Moi, when he was with Uhuru, and all these people have been on the same side.
Rita, with
In
Moi, did he
2007,
consult anybody when he
When he was
Thank you.
moving.
Did he
But-
consult
But
anybody?
he
Did
explained
he hold a
himself.
rally?
Okay,
He didn't.
it's not a rally, but he explained himself. Raila has been
No.
very good at
No,
one,
he woke up in the morning and did it.
working
Yes.
with advisors,
Yes.
and two, making sure he carries his people. When he joined Moi, he did not have this fallout that you're talking about. What was different about
But
him?
is
But
the-
to your question, which
Yes.
has not been answered, yeah? You're asking if this was new or a continuation of something.
Yes, or the
There are
beginning of
two-
something absolutely new.
No, there are two dynamics here, or rather, and there are three key players here. There's Raila, there's Uhuru, and there's Ruto. Even as we talk about the handshake, we cannot leave the narrative of the DP Ruto out. Because, again, as he says, it's this handshake that birthed the executive order.
But is that really the truth of the matter? That's what I'm actually asking.
But you see, an executive order is something that, it's not a secret. Lydia works in government. An executive order is not a secret. When your boss tells you, now this is
What
my
we shall
executive
do.
order number 1, this is how we shall behave as partners. You shall step aside. I am pursuing legacy. This is what you want to do. So, in my thinking, as someone who has worked in the Raila campaign and witnessed the handshake and moved on to a different campaign, which was the Ruto campaign, and then moved forward, I would think Uhuru was trying to be smart. And him trying to be smart did not start with the handshake. Even during the 27... Lydia is smiling because she knows it's true. Even during the campaign in 2017, I cannot tell you that Uhuru and Ruto never spoke. Uhuru and Raila never spoke. And politicians behave differently. So this plan of them coming together and setting Ruto aside did not start
Hold
with
it.
the handshake.
Okay,
it
let's
was
actually-
preconceived while the first term was ongoing, and they found a way to execute it and shove off this gentleman.
That is one narrative.
Let's
Yes.
just breathe for a minute and take a
Yes.
break, and then we'll come back and continue, because I know, Cece, hold on to that. Don't lose that thought. It's 28 minutes to 10 o'clock. The conversation continues with Lydia Mavia and Rita OYIER in the studio today, and looking at the state of the 2022 race. We'll take a break and take a look at weather and traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, jumping back into the conversation. If you're just joining us, Lydia Mavia and Rita OYIER are with us in the studio today, and we're looking at 2022, the race to the end. Just before we enter that break, CT, you were going to go off.
What we're discussing is interesting because it gives you an academic perspective of what politics is like. Now, I'm going to provide a more cynical perspective, and I'm going to ask my question from that perspective. You cannot look at politics and not look at the politicians and who they are and what they've stood for in the past and what they are in the present. You also can't look at just the entity, I'm using the word entity, that you refer to as politics, and why it is people go about doing the things that they do. That they want to help the citizenry, that is a constant narrative, even when they have no intention whatsoever. That they want to be able to be remembered well, that's also another narrative. That they want peace, I believe in it, because in the absence of that, they can't thrive and they can't do the very thing that they genuinely want to do. Okay? That I understand. Why I went back into history was every time we talk about a handshake, even with independence itself, is people who are on opposing sides seemingly coming together. We've seen it at so many phases of our history that I'm surprised that when you had this 2018 handshake, it became an issue. It just followed a long trajectory of handshakes that we've had before. The thing that it did, a position was taken and people were given an opportunity to fall where they may, to choose the path that they'd like to choose. Now, this election, in my opinion, the uniqueness of it is this. We've never seen a situation where you have a presidency. We've always had a president and a vice president. And we've never seen a presidency where the two principals in that presidency seem to be at odds and they continue being at odds. And then a third party enters, someone who was in the opposition comes in. And then narratives change, and what we hear, in my mind, are very confusing narratives that move you away from the real issue. And the question is, what really are we dealing with, or what were we dealing with? When you talk legacy, what are you talking about? Projects. That's what the government's supposed to do. When you're talking about moving forward, what are you talking about? What are the realities of our politics?
The reality of our politics is this. You have a president who has a very ambitious deputy president. And he knows that, because he's an experienced politician, so he knows for him to be able to navigate the next 5 years, he needs a serious buffer against the onslaught that is coming, so that he's able to focus on his work, and so that he's not held hostage or blackmailed.
Why would he be held hostage, and what would hold him hostage is the
So
president?
so he
Lydia is not
decides.
answering this question the way it's supposed to ask. The question
Okay,
you
so
asked
Rita,
hold on.
is...
You're
Just-
not going to
just,
come to you, Rita, and you can answer it in the way that you
Lydia
feel.
is taking us round in circles.
Lydia, just go ahead with your
Let Lydia
answer.
take us round in circles.
Let
Then
me
we'll
take
come
us
to you,
round.
and then you take us round your
I might
circles.
get to the bullseye after I go around in the circle. So this is the thing, though. The president wanted a buffer, okay, away from all that language around peace and whatnot. The most important consequence of the handshake is the parliamentary backup that the president got for his agenda. Okay? So that just because you are running for president in 2022 does not mean that you're going to have my hands tied and blackmail me for the next 5 years.
You've used that word 3 times now. Blackmail.
This is the experience of the first term from what we are able to...
What is blackmail? When someone blackmails you,
You see,
they know something that everyone
So,
shouldn't
no,
know.
that is why you need to give me a chance to talk, because Lydia
Wait,
waited
come
for
with
30
you.
we
minutes
are coming.
and still take us round in circles.
no.
Blackmail
Go ahead and
can
finish
be
with that point,
explicit.
Lydia.
Blackmail can be explicit or implicit. Okay.
So this
like
one was,
me, I feel
was this one
blackmailed.
explicit or implicit?
It was like me. I feel very blackmailed by, like, for example, my nanny. Okay, I give her off for 3 days. Then
Then she's supposed to come back.
She comes back on the 4th day. She knows I'll not fire her because I need her, because she's the one with the bond with my little boy. So that is what happens. That is what happened in the first
Okay,
term.
fine.
It was implicit blackmail. The president wanted to disentangle himself from it, and for him to disentangle himself from it, he needed a political
A
buffer.
backup. All
the
right.
political,
All
the
right.
political
Lydia.
buffer. was Raila
Parliamentary.
Odinga.
Now,
Okay,
Go ahead,
Rita.
Rita.
So this is the thing. You've asked a very pertinent question. The back end of politics always boils down to resources. And that is why when you hear Lydia talk about blackmail, talk about parliamentary backup, when they start harping on corruption, when they start pointing fingers, it boils down to the money. All these shenanigans you're seeing, including this parliamentary support, is so that people access public funds. All this fight is all about the money. And someone should ask you if, like you're saying, development a government should do.
That's their job.
Yes, that is their job. So why are they fighting about the money? In whose interest is it to have a government that pushes a PFM Act that is anti the Constitution? Why is it that they were so comfortable as Jubilee in the first term to have a Finance Management Act that is explicitly against the Constitution, that we are getting debt from this country and paying suppliers directly, and then we have things like Aror Kimwarer that nobody can account for? It all boils down. It
Lydia,
all boils down
Let her continue,
to
please.
money, and we have to accept that. It is not about love. It is not about peace.
But-
It's just about how much can someone give me space to access the money and not blackmail me through parliament so that I get my stuff done. Even this, when you hear someone like Ruto say,
I agree
we
it's
have
about money.
No, just a minute. When you hear this particular president has been suffering this question of legacy, and you see legacy because I have not done this thing, I'm continuing with Kibaki's projects, and then suddenly he's commissioning all these projects that are out of budget, they're unapproved, they have nothing. I mean, I keep asking, and forgive me if I don't sound very patriotic, what was the emergency and urgency behind Uhuru Gardens Museum? Why was it such a crisis? What were we chasing as a country comparative to all the issues we have? Why was that a crisis? And that it had to be done out of budget and out of approval.
You know, Rita, for a moment
so
there...
at the bottom of it, at the bottom of all this drama...
The ones I was drawing.
No, actually, no. What Rita has done, I'm listening to Rita and it's like I'm listening to Jimmy Wanjigi.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay,
No,
we can
that is not true. But
Let-
even
let-
Ruto
let me
said-
tie this up for her.
even
Let
Ruto
me-
said
Rita,
that
let me-
there
it is not
are
to
billions
say-
of unbudgeted for
Rita,
projects.
it is not to say that what you're saying doesn't have merit.
It has
It
merit.
is to say that you sound like Jimmy.
Yes,
Wanjigi.
I did not say it doesn't have
Okay,
merit.
so if we tie this together now, I mean, what we've seen over the last couple of days, then is a tiff between the president and the deputy president, another one then being escalated on a national level. And many would argue that a lot of these things that you're talking about then would be elements towards the tiff. What are your thoughts on that? And does it then bear any influence on the decisions that people are going to make come 7 days from today?
So this is the thing. People go for power so that they can control the distribution of resources. That is the whole definition of politics. So they do want access to resources, but it's not for the purposes that Rita is saying, that people just want money so that they can accumulate. I do believe that the pursuit of power is so that people can be able to determine how those resources are going to be distributed. So I'm the one who is going to call the shots as to whether which road is going to be prioritized over which road, which dam over which dam. And that is what the fight is always about. And that is legitimate political
And that is the bottom line.
contestation. Now, about the tiff between the president and the deputy president, I will tell you this. Uhuru Kenyatta is not a confrontational politician. He has never been a confrontational politician. So this is, first of all, very out of character for the president. He is not a person who is unable, as it were, or unwilling to close ranks, as we have seen before. He was able to close ranks with the Ruto way back when there was the formation of the initial partnership between URP and TNA, despite the history, of the post-election violence and all that, and their communities having very deep-seated feelings against each other. Uhuru Kenyatta has been able to close ranks with Kibaki, despite standing with Moi against Kibaki, when Kibaki was coming into office. So he has not just the experience of reaching across, but he has that pragmatism inbuilt deep within him. This is a man who gave up the presidency to Mudavadi in 2013 because he was convinced by people
How long
close
did that
to
last?
him that he would occasion post-election violence. But the reason why that it didn't last, because some of us held him hostage and conspired to make sure that he stays on the ticket. He had walked away from that ticket, but we had to get him back because some of us believed too intensely in his dream. So this is the thing.
Yeah.
I am convinced that there is a timing problem with Uhuru's capacity to close ranks with Ruto. I believe that whatever agenda he has to serve or has to pursue at this time cannot allow him to close ranks with Ruto. Because if he wanted to, he has the history to be able to do it. And I believe that those ranks will be closed after this election, sometime after this election, for purposes of whatever the purposes of the handshake will have been served, and so he will be able to close ranks with Ruto and he has said it in Sagana. In Sagana 3, he said it.
Yes.
He said that wacha kwanza, tufanye hii mambo na huu mzee, alafu pale mbele, once we see that this guy, is okay, and he's looking like he can organize himself nicely, we can support him for subsequent elections. So I'm
Rita.
sure the
Yes.
reconciliation between Uhuru and Ruto is somewhere in the future.
It's
just
going to
not
happen?
now.
What are your thoughts
So
on that,
my
Rita?
thoughts on this, and I really like Lydia because she's an honest person. She's talked about they held Uhuru hostage in 2013 when he was supposed to give whatever it is until Madimoni happened to Mudavadi.
I organized the
Ruto,
Madimoni
yes,
conference.
yes, you did. And then Ruto also alleged in 2017 this gentleman didn't want to go for the second election until Ruto held him hostage. And now the handshake happened. I'm assuming Raila is holding him hostage. But now that we are here, the thing that
Why didn't you go back into history and say in 2007, Kibaki also, it is said,
Held
also
him hostage.
Also wanted to give up the presidency.
Maybe the best president is one who is not
but it's still
Who is not so
but you
greedy
see,
for the power.
no. So
Rita,
what
yes.
I'm trying to say is my biggest challenge with Uhuru, and I'm saying this because as an individual, I actually have a very soft spot for him. We would be friends. I think he just doesn't have the spine. I'm sorry, Lydia. I think he just doesn't have the spine to do the right thing for the country. He's always open to ideas and suggestions. And for me, out of all these things that have been said, the one that took me aback the most, forget about Ruto saying, don't kill my children. The one that took me aback the most is when the president said, you have been insulting me for 3 years. I had the power to kill you, but I didn't do
No, he
it.
didn't
He
say
didn't say
No,
that.
he
He
said
didn't
it's
say
there.
that.
He said,
No.
and we can read it. Wait, it is
He
there.
didn't say I had the
It
power
is
to
there.
kill you.
He said, I have done nothing. I had the power to. I'm not.
He
like
didn't
what
say
do you
to
thi-
kill
Yeah,
you.
but he didn't say
He
no
just said
kill.
I had
That
the
was
power.
the context. We can read.
And you
then
you
we
can't say
interpret.
someone who has taken on the
So
biggest infrastructure
let's
gap in
say,
this country
when I
and
say-
dealt with it head on at the expense of his
biggest
political
infrastructure?
capital.
Okay.
The biggest
At the
infrastructure.
expense of
Right.
his political capital.
Ladies.
So wait. So
You
what
can't
I'm
call him
saying
spineless.
is
He's
no,
not
no, no,
spineless.
no. Political. Let me tell you, Lydia.
It's important.
He is up. As in, I have never seen. Even in a relationship or even for your child, you do not want someone who is so open to suggestion that everything sounds like a good
Lydia,
idea.
can I-
and
can
he's
I-
always, if
Lydia,
people have given you,
Rita,
whether in
Rita.
your party, I'm the Rita, she's the Lydia, even in your party, when people have given you the power to stand up, and that's what you're calling taking hostage, and that's the problem we have with Raila. If people have given you the mandate to represent them, it is not your willy-nilly to wake up and say, I don't feel like I'm feeling a certain way. We will hold you to accountable. And that's what I'm talking about.
Rita.
Having accountability to the
Rita.
voters, having accountability to your
Rita.
base. And that is why he's lost Mount Kenya,
Rita.
because he's not been accountable.
Rita.
And even when you
Rita.
say he's
Rita.
lost, oh, sorry, City.
Yes.
I was just finishing.
Finish your point, Rita,
Yes,
please.
and even when you say that it's a timing issue, him reconciling with Ruto, probably if Ruto went to him, he would still be open to the suggestion of the reconciliation.
Lydia seems to see that there will be a reconciliation
There will
in
be.
the offing.
Oh,
am
but
certain of it.
I
Okay.
think Lydia's onto something. You know why?
I am certain of it.
Early on this morning when we were talking, I said, this narrative that the gloves are off, I said they are not. If the gloves were off, the things you'd be hearing both parties saying about each other because they know,
Each other.
it would be horrendous.
Absolutely.
Those hands are in some velvet. It isn't an iron hand. What is it about Kenyans? You have someone who tells you what to do at every turn is a dictator. You have someone who is open to ideas and accommodates
It's fine.
views and spineless. Come on. So what do you want?
Thank you.
Let me ask you a
let me first of all.
Let me ask a
because
question.
I-
Because
yes,
our
everyone
time-
has questions. No,
our
we all
time-
have
I've asked a
question.
question. Do ask your question.
Our time is actually running down, and I think that we're getting to a point whereby we might be going into historical issues, and then looking away from what we're dealing with going forward. Right? We have an election that's taking place on the 7th. There are many things that are bouncing around, and shouting at us right now. And one of those issues is the IEBC. In 1 minute, if possible, ladies, what
I will tell
are
you.
your thoughts
You'll tell me.
about the IEBC holding a credible election today? Rita,
My
go.
thoughts have been and will always be, in any decent democracy, a man like Chebukati should not be running elections, because in his term, we have seen commissioners resign because they were doubting, or they said they are not, he's not providing leadership. We have seen people die, or a person die in his elections. He has been called out by the Supreme Court for having irregularities and illegalities. He has asked his CEO, who logged into the server with my credentials and inserted some figures. We have never received responses for those things to date. We do not have a full audit report, as Supreme Court asked, that he has presented to the court today. On a moral and ethical, and for the sake of integrity, Chebukati should not be in that office. Everything we are facing right now.
So the question that was asked.
Everything we are facing right now that looks like an IEBC problem could just be eliminated by this man stepping aside. But since he's there, and I have seen he's trying to do better with his communication the past few weeks, I encourage him to continue communicating with all stakeholders.
So are we going to have a credible election?
With Chebukati at the helm? I feel he's been made to feel a bit comfortable.
Are we going to have a credible election?
No, I
It's
think
a very direct question.
my answer is Chebukati is feeling comfortable with his incompetence.
All right.
That is he's feeling comfortable with his incompetence.
I believe that we will have a credible election, not just because I believe in the human resource that is inside of IEBC, but because of the vigilance that I am expecting from the political players right now. I'm expecting a huge investment in agents by both the Raila Odinga campaign and the Ruto campaign. And so there'll be very little room for anybody to machinate anything, because ultimately what is an election? An election is the people making a decision on who they want to lead them. So long as people are able to walk into a polling station, they are able to cast their vote, that vote is counted accurately and tabulated accurately, I do not anticipate any other problems. Everything else is shenanigans. And let me also say this. We need to stop equating. I had put a timer for her.
Right.
We need to stop
So she's
equating.
eaten my minute.
No, I actually put 5 minutes. We need to stop equating IEBC to Chebukati. Because there is this sense when you ask somebody a question about IEBC, they immediately pivot to Chebukati. But remember, Chebukati is only one commissioner. Decisions of the
Chairman.
IEBC is only,
Yeah.
is only the
Yeah,
chairman.
Chairman.
I
apologize.
disagree.
I
It's like
apologize.
saying we cannot equate government to Uhuru.
Decisions in the commission are by majority vote. That's the first thing you have
And
to
also
remember.
there's a secretariat that actually
And
does
then
the
there's a
day-to-day
secretariat.
work.
And
that
when you see
secretariat-
them in a press
that
conference, they look
secretariat
like they're not
has
IEBC.
officials who are competently recruited on merit, and they are at every level, at the national level, regional level, county level, constituency level, ward level, polling center level, polling station level. So you can imagine how many people, when you say that IEBC is incompetent, you better be telling me that thousands and thousands and thousands of staff are incompetent.
Okay.
But instead,
You know
we are
what?
focusing on one man.
I hear you. This was season 1, episode 1. And I think, ladies, we need to come back into the room
Please.
and open up some of these issues, because we just have
We just
barely
touched the
started to
surface.
scratch the surface of this. So is that a yes, you'll come back? We'll do it? Yes?
Yeah.
Lydia, Rita?
Yeah, we have a few days to election, so I don't know.
Well,
if that is.
we'll see what can be done.
Yeah.
All right. We're coming to the close of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. Thank you. It's been a riveting one, that's for sure. The conversations continue tomorrow. Thank you for being with us, Lydia, Madhya, and Rita OYIER. Thanks for being here this hour. And as we come to the close of things, remind you that Pocket by Mozilla, as you're reading these things, listening to these things, storing those videos away, that you can have an opportunity to share them later. Download Google Play Store, Apple App Store. The conversations continue tomorrow. It's 10 o'clock.